Ohai. Lutsk, the city in the west of Ukraine, the administrative center of the Volynsk region and the Lutsk district. One of the most ancient cities of times of the Volynsk Principality in the territory of the western Ukraine. The first written mention is dated 1085. The modern name of the city, Lutsk, comes from older name Lutsk. Also other versions of this toponym occur in ancient documents. Lutsk in a Latinizirvani form, Lucioria. There is no consensus about origin of this word, but scientists repeatedly made hypotheses of name etymology. There are most popular assumptions. The name comes from the word of river bend, river gulf, onions. The name is connected with a name of the leader of the East Slavic tribe of Dulab, Luka, who founded this city. The name comes from the self-name of the tribe. The scientist Sosnevsky claims that the name of the city comes from the word meadows, pasture near the river. The name of residence accepted in modern Russian, Luciana. History of the city. The earliest archaeological materials in Lutsk belong to the 7th-9th centuries, however time of construction of strengthenings and formation of the ancient settlement is definitely not defined. The most ancient kernel of the city is on the cape in a bend of the river Snach, also her right inflow of the Glushtsa river. The cape is created by 3 natural hills. On the highest the Lutsk Detnets, on lower the roundabout city settled down. The total strengthened area of Lutsk was about 7 hectares. On the ancient settlement semi-dugouts and land dwellings are investigated. Time of the basis of analytic Lutsk is unknown. In the chronicle it is for the first time mentioned under 1085 when was already strengthened city. Representatives of East Slavic tribes of Dulab were its initial inhabitants. In 1097 Sviatopok Yazovich gave Lutsk to David Sviatovich, who was soon expelled by David Igorovich. Since then Lutsk to the middle of the 12th century remained a suburb of the Vladimir Volynsk Principality, despite claims of Princess Kiev. In the spring of 1149 Lutsk sustained a 6-week siege Yuri Dolgoruki's regiments. Since 1154 Yaroslav Izyaslovich. -1180. Reigned in Lutsk, at whom Lutsk became the center of the Lutsk Principality. In 1227 Yaroslav Ingvarovich, Yaroslav Izyaslovich's grandson, was forced to concede the destiny to Daniel Romanovich Galitsky. In 1255 the city sustained a siege of Karemsa, the nephew Batya. In 1320 Lutsk was taken by Gedimin's troops. In 1324 Lyubert Gediminovich, at whom the city of Lutsk received superiority over Vladimir, got the Lutsk destiny. By the end of the 14th century Lutsk became above Vladimir and on trade. Merchants ran from all countries here, and some lodged here. There were quarters inhabited by Germans, Poles, etc. Lutsk is listed in Analytic, the list of the Russian cities distant and near. The end of the 14th century. In 1429 in Lutsk the known Congress of Monarchs, which purpose was a reasoning on measures of the minding general enemy, the Turk, took place. There were a King Polish Jagiellon, the Grand Duke Lithuanian Witold Great, Hungarian and Roman King Sigismund, the Grand Duke Moscow Vasily II with many specific princes and the Metropolitan Photius, the King the Danish, Papal Legate, the Grand Master Prussian, the Voivode of Wallachia, the Khan the Perekopskian Byzantine ambassador. Sigismund invited sovereigns and grandees to mutual reconciliation and a unification of East and Western Christian churches, to fight of the minding Turks and to assistance of Byzantium. Continuation of this congress was in 1430 in Trakak and Vilna. In those days Lutsk was the important economic and cultural center. In 1432 he acquired the Magdeburg right. Since 1440 Svidrigaila seized Lutsk, and after his death, 1452, the Lutsk earth had no more the specific prince. At the end of the 15th century Lutsk was considered as one of the best cities of age, but his welfare began to fall from a half of the 16th century. About 1569 more in the Lutsk county was considered so as a nobleman 226. And during accession he to Russia in 1795 in him was only 50 petty bourgeois houses. The others belonged to Jews and Karaites. In 1795, as a result of the third section of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Volynsk lands together with Lutsk were a part of the Russian Empire. Since 1795 Lutsk, the district city of the Volynsk Namestnichestvo, and since 1796, the center of the Volynsk province. The Lutsk diocese is mentioned for the first time in 1288. At the beginning of the 15th century in Lutsk there were about 15 Orthodox churches, from which many during the Lithuanian Polish dominion were destroyed or turned into uniatsky, and then into churches. Catholic bishops were strongly approved in Lutsk not earlier than the second half of the 16th century. In 1617, for a fight against the Jesuits called here in 1609, there was a Lutsk Brotherhood which existed till 1803. In 1832 the gymnasium was open. The past childhood of the famous poetess Lesa Ukrainka. During Civil War, 1917-1920. Lutsk repeatedly passed from hand to hand. From 1921 to 1939 the city was in structure of Poland. In March 1921 Lutsk becomes the capital of the new Volynsk voivodeship. After formation of the voivodeship the city builds up after serious military destructions. Many new buildings for voivodske and city institutions are built. The buildings built generally in style of constructivism popular at the time are noticeable in an image of the city also today. School No. 1. National Bank, Post Office, City Council. The former post office. Directorate of Ukrytilkon, the Volynsk Museum of Local Lore. Land Management. Officers Club. Land Bank. Old building of the university. Gymnasium. Sioux Building. The whole residential areas for officers. Between Paramoji Avenue and March 8th Street. And government employees are under construction. Between Chopin Street and Yaroshuka. Also most part of building of streets the curve shaft, Vinichenko, Senatorki Levchinivsko, Bandera, Yaroshuk, Chopin belongs to this period. In the city the Polish and European jazz, numerous trading companies, theater, movie theaters, schools and gymnasiums, medical institutions, stadium, airfield are opened. The Museum of Local Lore is based. In 1928, Lutsk receives railway communication with Lviv, regular passenger navigation before splittings, and Pinsk, and regular long-distance bus traffic is established. The population of the city increased from 30,000 right after war to 40,000 in 1939. In 1928-1938 the position of the Volynsk voivode was held by Genrikh Yuzevsky, the famous statesman of Poland and the former Vice Minister of Internal Affairs in the government of Hun, who much made for economic development of age and strengthening of mutual understanding between Poles and Ukrainians. In 1939, as a result of the Polish campaign of Rokedy, Western Ukraine was a part of the USSR. During the Great Patriotic War, the city was occupied on June 25, 1941 by the German troops. Before retreat, the staff of People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs killed in local prison nearly 2.8 thousand prisoners. Every other day after the beginning of the German occupation, the Ukrainian nationalists arranged disorder among the Jewish population of the city. From June 27 to July 7, 1941, the Sonderkommando 4A shot about 1,500 people. On December 11, 12, about 19,000. The remained Jews were isolated in a ghetto. The ghetto existed until the end of August 1942, when Germans and the Ukrainian police shot from 15000 to 17000 of its inhabitants. On December 12, 1942, also about 500 prisoners of the labor camp were killed. On March 20, 1943, all staff of the Ukrainian Auxiliary Police of Lutsk deserted and joined the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. UVA. Deserters before withdrawal from the city attacked prisoner of war camp, from which they released about 40 people. During the Volynsk tragedy, groups of UPA carried out massacre of Poles in suburbs of Lutsk. The most bloody attack happened on December 24, 1943, when 97 people were killed. In total, during World War II, the Ukrainian nationalists killed in Lutsk not less than 191 Poles. On February 2, 1944, the city was freed by the Soviet army. After war, almost all Poles were deported from border areas to Poland, and Catholic temples were turned into warehouses or destroyed. In 1939, the theater, nowadays Volynsk Academic Ukrainian Musical and Drama Theater of T.Sh. Shevchenko was formed. From ancient monuments, the Lubartolok with the Vladichi Tower, the Cathedral Peter and Paul Church, Krestovoskia Church, a synagogue, the small lock are restored. Geography. Climate of Lutsk moderately continental, with soft winter and in the warm summer. Average annual air temperature is plus 7.4 C, the lowest it in January. Minus 4.9 C. The greatest in July. Plus 18.0 C. The lowest average monthly air temperature in January. Minus 14.0 C. Is recorded in 1987, the highest. Plus 2.0 C. In 2007. The lowest average monthly temperature in July. Plus 15.8 C. Was observed in 1962 and 1979, the highest. plus 21.4 C. In 1959, an absolute minimum of air temperature, minus 33.6 C. The absolute maximum, plus 36.2 C. In August 1946 and 1952 is recorded in February 1929. On average in a year in Lutsk 560 mm of an atmospheric precipitation dropout. It is smallest in March, is greatest in July. The minimum annual amount of precipitation, 310, was observed in 1961, maximum, 822. In 1931, the maximum daily amount of precipitation, 114, is recorded on August 4, 1959. On average in a year in the city 148 days with rainfall are observed. Least of all them. In August most of all, 16. In December. Annually in Lutsk snow cover is formed, however its height is insignificant. Relative air humidity in a year averages 78%, the smallest in May, 64%. The greatest in December, 89%. The smallest overcast is observed in August, the greatest in December. The greatest repeatability in the city winds from the west half, the smallest from the northeast. The largest speed of wind in November, the smallest in the summer. In January it averages 4.1 m/s, in July minus 2.8 m/s. Nature. Memorial Park. Natural and Reserved Fund. All zoological wildlife areas. Nadavsky Swamp. Ornithological wildlife areas. Birds Grove. Botanical instructions of the nature. Oak Grove, Oakave Placiform Memorial, Plane Tree Western. Hydrological instructions of the nature. Teremnovsky Ponds. Botanical Gardens. Volden. Hydrography. Through Lutsk the navigable river flows Snatch. Inflow of Pripyat, the basin of Dnieper. And also in the territory of the city there are three small rivers. Sapalievka. Length minus 12.4 km. The right inflow of the Styr River. Omlyanik, 12.6 km. And Zhidavka, 4 km. The left inflows of the Styr River. Belong to objects of hydrographic network, a hydrological nature sanctuary of local value, Teremnovsky Ponds. 2 ponds of 6 hectares constructed in 1983 on the Sapalievka River, and also the all zoological wildlife area of local value, the Nadavsky Swamp. The area of 116.6 hectares, founded in 1995. Which is hydrological connected with the Styr on the left coast, the system of meliorative channels. The total area of water protection zones of the rivers which proceed across the territory of Lutsk is 450 hectares. The area of water city facilities, over 100 hectares. Water supply. In Lutsk there are over 100 artesian wells of economic and drinking water supply. Water supply of the city is carried out at the expense of underground waters, aquifers of Megalno-Cretaceous deposits. Drinking water of rather high quality. In 1897, according to a census, about 16,000 people, about 9,000 Jews, 3,000 Russians, 1,500 Ukrainians, 1,200 Poles, 400 Tatars lived in the city. In 2010, 214,095 inhabitants, from them 128,400. 59.16%. Orthodox Christians, 56446. 26.3%. Catholics, 26000. 12.14%. Protestants, 2647. 1.23%. Jews lived in the city. The population of the city as of July 1, 2018 was 213,350 permanent residents and 216,433 persons of actual population. Economy. Lutsk is a kernel of the Volynsk industrial hub, which includes also the city of Kivertsi. The leading industry is the mechanical engineering and metal working. The plants: Lutsk Automobile, Lutsk Repair Plant, Motor, Modern Expo Enterprise, Bearing, Electro Hardware, Municipal Mechanical Engineering and Municipal Equipment, Production and Scientific Association, Electrothermometria. In the city there are enterprises of chemical industry. The plant of plastic products. Building industry. Volyn-Zeliston, the plants of large panel housing construction, cardboard and ruberoid and silicate. Light industry. Production and Trade Silk Association and Production Sewing Association. Volyn, shoe factory, the plant of synthetic skin. The woodworking industry. Furniture and tear plants. The food industry. Cannery, Harcha product, the plant of provisions, Hlibo, milk and creameries. Transport. On the city share taxis and trolleybuses ply. A system of scheduling of the movement of passenger transport with use of a system of GPS navigation works in the city that allows to monitor the movement of minibuses in real time. Through the city there pass some national and international highways. There is a long-distance message with Moscow, Kiev, Lviv and other large cities. In the city the largest in the Volynsk region settles down after Kovel, the railway station. On August 9, 1928 Lutsk received railway communication with Lviv. The railroad Lviv-Lutsk, the last from constructed in the western Ukraine. At first freight trains went, since May 15, 1929 opened the movement of passenger trains. The track was constructed at the expense of the population. Construction began in 1925. Culture. Volynsk Museum of Local Lore. Theaters. Volynsk Academic Musical and Drama Theater. Volynsk Academic Regional Puppet Theater. Volynsk Regional Philharmonic Hall. Museums. Volynsk Museum of Local Lore. The Museum of the Volynsk Icon, with a unique meeting of icons from all Volhynia. An invaluable pearl of the museum is the Holmsky wonderworking icon of the Mother of God, the most rare monument of the Byzantine art of the 11th, 12th centuries, one of the most esteemed Christian shrines. Volynsk Regional Museum of the Ukrainian Army and Military Equipment. Drugstore Museum. Works since 1845. It is located at Rynek Square. Lutsk Art Museum. Museum of Archaeology of the Volynsk National University of Lesa Ukrainka. Museum of the Modern Ukrainian Art Korsakov. Sites: Lutsk Castle, the 13th-14th centuries. Defensive works, city symbol. In one of towers the Museum of Bells is located. In the territory of the Lock the Museum of the Ancient Book, Art Gallery, excavation of Cathedral Church of Street. John the Evangelist. Cathedral Nea Street. Church of the Intercession, one of the most ancient temples. It is constructed in the 13th-15th century by the Prince Vitovt. We're told. The church is reconstructed in 1873-76. In church till 1962 there was an ancient icon of the Volynsk Mother of God. In the past the temple was Cathedral Uniecki Church, now Cathedral Church Ukrainian Orthodox Church Moskovskogo Patriarchata. Danila Galitskogo Street. 12. The Lutheran Church, the head of the 20th century, is constructed in Neo-Gothic style on the bases of the Carmelite monastery. Now there is a Baptist church. Holy Trinity Cathedral, 1752-1755. Originally it was the Catholic monastery of Bernardines. The project is reconstructed in cathedral in 1877-1879. Pavel Gazitsky. Nowadays Cathedral of the Volynsk Diocese of Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Teatrolnaya Square. The monastery of Dominicans, 1390, in the beginning wooden, in the 18th century is reconstructed in a stone. In 1847 it is closed by the Russian authorities. Now here the Volynsk Theological Seminary of Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Moscow Patriarchate. Dragomanov Street. Works. Krestovoskia Church. 1619. An early model of reorganization of a wooden construction in stone. In 1702 in a church vault the poet D. Burkovsky is buried. Nowadays Temple of Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Daniel Galitsky Street. Jesuit Monastery, 16th-17th centuries. Cathedral Nea Street. Cathedral Street. Apostles Piet and Pavel, 1639. Giacomo Briano. Originally the temple was under construction as a Jesuit church at the monastery. After the fire of a cathedral church in 1781 the department of the Catholic bishop is transferred here. Now it is the operating Roman Catholic Cathedral of the Lutsk diocese. The bell tower, 1539, belonged to the burned-down Troitsk Cathedral Church. Cathedral Nea Street. Monastery Sheretik, 17th century. It is constructed on the place of an ancient cathedral church. Now Curia of the Lutsk Roman Catholic Diocese and the residence of the Lutsk Bishop. Cathedral Nea Street. 17. Defensive Tower of Princes Chartorisky, 15th century, the only survived fragment of the lower roundabout. Lock. Dragomanov Street. Monastery Brigidok, 1624. It is built on the place of the palace of the 16th century. In 1846 the monastery was closed, and in his room made prison and then musical school. Nowadays Men's Orthodox Monastery of Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Kiev Patriarchy. Cathedralnaya Street. 16. The monastery, a monument of architecture of national value. Synagogue, the 14th-15th centuries. It is restored in 1981. Monument of architecture of national value. Originally the construction entered the defensive system of the roundabout block. Daniel Galitsky Street. 33. The House Gulevici, 16th century, one of the few remained examples of inhabited architecture of century. Cathedralnaya Street. 23. Vaults of the Old City, the 16th-18th centuries. Researches since 1970. Household rooms and prison are found. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.